Everyone, and welcome to our Sustainable Activism webinar. My name is Lisa Levinson. I'm your host tonight, and I'm the director of the Sustainable Activism Campaign for In Defense of Animals. And it's my pleasure to provide these emotional and spiritual tools for animal activists. We present this monthly webinar to provide different strategies and also some self-care tools. And we also have a support line, just in case you don't know about it. You're welcome to call us if you need support. And the number is 800-705-0425. So I'm very excited to introduce our guest this evening. This webinar is going to be about mindfulness, and we have an expert on that topic, Bob Isaacson, who is a dear friend of mine. I know him well, but I'm going to go ahead and read his bio so you'll get to know him as well. Bob Isaacson is the president and CEO and co-founder of Dharma Voices for Animals, the only international Buddhist animal rights and animal advocacy organization in the world. DVA has 28 chapters around the world, has its members many of the best-known monastic and lay Buddhist leaders, and has produced the widely acclaimed documentary film Animals and the Buddha by Keegan Kuhn of Cowspiracy and What the Health fame. It's a fabulous movie. I've seen it and really enjoyed it. Bob is a lay Buddhist teacher practicing in the Vipassana Theravada tradition for 23 years. He leads 2 ongoing meditation groups, day-long retreats, and weekend residential retreats in the San Diego area. He teaches non-sectarian mindfulness and meditation, which he will be sharing with us tonight. Bob was a civil rights, human rights attorney for 25 years in Chicago and San Diego, specializing in defending people against the death penalty. His efforts and those of others led to the abolition of the death penalty in the state of Illinois in 2011, directly saving the lives of nearly 200 women and men. I think that's a little-known fact about Bob, so I'm glad to share that with you as well. Hi, Bob. How you doing today?
Hey, Lisa. Thanks for the introduction. I appreciate it. Everyone, I hope, can hear me okay. So an overview, what we're going to do tonight, what I'll talk about. I'm going to leave time for questions and answers at the end. So I'm going to talk first about our organization, Dharma Voices for Animals, tell you about that. I'm really excited to share a lot information with you about that. And then we're going to have the other half of the session will be about mindfulness and meditation. And I'll give a guided meditation. You could all try at home if you like. And then we'll talk about it. In the end, we'll leave time for questions and answers. And both about what I said in the first part, about Dharma Voices for Animals, and also about the meditation and mindfulness practice. So that's where we're going to go. So I'm going to get started. Dharma Voices for Animals, and we call it DVA, as Lisa, my good friend Lisa, has already mentioned, is the only international Buddhist animal rights, animal advocacy group organization in the entire world. We're the only ones. And we've been around now for over 6 years. I think if there was another one, we probably would have heard about it. We've been all over the world. And I think it might be interesting just to share how it is that we got started. So I've been, as Lisa mentioned, I've been practicing Buddhist meditation, Buddhist practice for well over 20 years now. And I came to the practice thinking that it would be an animal-friendly spiritual path, but I was mistaken. The Buddhist teachings are really clear that his followers and those that practice Buddhism, practice meditation, should not be in any way causing harm, being part of the process of causing harm to any being. So it actually goes way beyond what the major religions and spiritual paths in the world say. It goes way beyond the moral compass of these other these other paths. I mean, all the religions talk about universal compassion, but Buddhism talks about extending non-harming to any being that can feel pain, just as we would extend compassion and non-harming to a human being. So every animal is clearly protected by the Buddhist teachings. The Buddha was real clear about this. So I thought when I first began practicing Buddhism or the Buddhist path that every retreat center in the world would be, if not vegan, at least vegetarian. And boy, was I wrong. As I got into the practice, I realized that many Western teachers and many Western centers were eating animals, eating anything, without any concern whatsoever about the suffering of the animals that we cause when we eat them and when we use their products. So one day I had this rude awakening where I was with a Western teacher, and we went into a food mart, and I bought a salad with grilled vegetables, grilled veggies. And this teacher picked out a salad very similar to mine, but there's grilled chicken on it. And so I thought I was doing him a favor by saying, "Oh, that has chicken on it." And then he said to me, "I know." And that's when everything changed. And I realized that that a lot of Buddhist teachers were not really following the path of non-harming. So for a number of years, myself and some friends of mine would be trying to talk to Western teachers about this and trying to say, "I don't understand, because the teachings of the Buddha are very clear that a bird is entitled to our compassion just as our spouse or our partner or our best friend is entitled to our compassion. And no more would we eat a human being or our dogs than we would eat farmed animals. It's absolutely clear." And we got nowhere fast. We're getting nowhere with teachers. Teachers were already set in their ways. We realized we needed an organization. So that's when Dharma Voices for Animals was born. So 4 of us, Patty, Kim, David, and myself, started DVA in 2011. So it's a little bit over 6 years ago. And what we wanted to do, and by now, it all far surpassed our expectations. What we wanted to do was to have an organization that would be a safe place for people to go to come to associate with, to become members, to become diplomats and representatives of our organization, to bring together like-minded people around the world. So this DVA transcends cultures, races, traditions, Buddhist traditions. We have teachers and members from everywhere, every race, every ethnicity, every Buddhist tradition, almost every country in the world. So we come together with this common inspiration to be a voice for animals. Obviously, animals can't speak for themselves. So as Buddhists, as Dharma practitioners, Dharma is the teaching of the Buddha, we know that we're really the only chance that animals have. So our message is to Buddhists, to Buddhist communities, to Buddhist centers, and to Buddhist countries. There are a number of countries where Buddhism is the predominant religion. For example, in Sri Lanka, the practice of Buddhism is specifically protected in the constitution of the country. There are other countries like this in Asia. All the Buddhist countries are in Asia. So this is the inspiration behind DVA. As Lisa mentioned, we have thousands of members from around the world. And you can see many of them, just to get an idea of the diversity, the geographical and the nationality diversity that we have in our organization. Just go to our chapter, go to our website under the Who We Are page. We actually list all of our members. So you can see who's a member of our organization. It's actually quite easy to become a member. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And we have some 28 chapters around the world in most of the major cities in the U.S., Los Angeles, Chicago, New York City, in Europe, and in many Asian countries and in Australia. So what have we been doing? So in order to be an effective voice for animals, we need to have programs and plans, just like any animal rights or animal protection organization, or like any activism organization needs. So just a few of the things we've been doing. In Sri Lanka, we've been supporting the first animal rights, animal welfare bill in that country since 1906. And we've had meetings with the top political leaders in the country. In the country of Bhutan, which is a little country up in the Himalayas, or they call it the Himalayas, we opposed in action directed to the government the building of slaughterhouses. And this is a country, a Buddhist country, almost exclusively Buddhist, where the teaching of the Buddha couldn't be any clearer that we're not supposed to be killing animals. And here, 10 new slaughterhouses for the first time in history were being built in Bhutan. So we've been working on that, bringing this to the attention of the governments, circulating a petition. And then at the largest retreat center in the West, in the Western world, which is where I practice, we have had a big impact. For example, they started, it's a vegetarian, not a vegan, but a vegetarian center. They started serving animal flesh at teacher retreats. Some of the teachers wanted that, so they started doing it. And we made a big protest against that, circulated a letter, an open letter to the leadership there, started talking to the people making decisions, the decision makers, and they changed that. They went back to not serving any animal flesh. And furthermore, we've had enormous impact on them moving towards a vegan food presentation. They cut back some 35,000 eggs less they're serving now than they did before we started working with them. So these are just a few examples. Things are going on all around the world, and the major issues, DVA is involved in those, in issues involving Buddhist countries, Buddhist centers, and Buddhist communities. So why have an organization, an international organization that centers on Buddhists? What's the point of that? Well, there's a couple reasons. The first one I've already talked about. The Buddha's message is the most animal friendly of any major religion. The Jains, or the Jans, as they pronounce their religion, Jain, is ISM, Jainism or Jains. There are about 3 or 4 million. There are some 1 billion Buddhists in the world. It's about 15% of the world population is Buddhist. And there are Buddhist countries all over the world. For example, forgot to turn off my phone. For example, in the country of Tibet, Bhutan, Burma, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, excuse me.
Please leave your name, your telephone number, and any message after the tone.
Yeah, sorry for the interruption. These are all countries that have populations of well over 10 million Buddhists. In China, for example, it's estimated that there are between 250 million and 750 million Buddhists in the country. So people aren't so comfortable about self-identifying with a particular religion in certain countries. So we're not really sure. But most of the people whose opinions I rely on estimate the number of Buddhists in China at about 750 million. So this is a huge, huge religion. So many people around the world identify as Buddhists. So we, in deciding what we were going to do about this issue, this problem, we decided just to concentrate on Buddhists and Buddhist communities. Now, people in our organization are from all religions, all spiritual paths. or no spiritual path or religion. It's just that from the point of view of who we target and who we're talking to and who we're having conversations with and who we're advocating with, it's strictly Buddhist communities, which gives us a lot to work with, 1 billion people in the world. So this combination of a powerful message by the Buddha, on the one hand, this huge opportunity for such an incredibly large number of people who self-identify as Buddhists in the world, it made a lot of sense to begin Dharma Voices for Animals. We have a Facebook page. Our main organization has a Facebook page. A number of our chapters have Facebook pages, including Kandy, Sri Lanka, and Perth, Australia. We have a major presence on Twitter. We have, as Lisa mentioned, a really well acclaimed, widely acclaimed film that was produced by Keegan Kuhn working with us, and this is called Animals and the Buddha. And this is a documentary that actually runs about 45 minutes. It's been translated into 10 languages beyond English, including Chinese, where more people speak Chinese than any other language in the world. And this film involves interviews of some of the top Buddhists in the world, some of the top Buddhist teachers, both monastic, monks and nuns, and also lay people. And we put together the case for, on the one hand, not eating animals, and on the other hand, eating a total plant-based diet. And the film is, you can get it on YouTube, and also we have a lot of DVDs that are circulated to places that don't have such reliable internet connections. So this is, also we offer materials for those that really want to talk about this. So in traditional Buddhist communities, there is a debate actually going on about what Buddhists should do, what Buddhists should eat. So in order to be sure that people are understanding this issue from the point of view of animals, we have two very extensive sets of materials on our website. And for those that are interested, you can find it either on our resources page, and it's very simple once you go to our resources page, or in the section called Right Eating. There are two sets of materials, one in each section. And we conferred with some of the top Buddhist scholars, so this is really a good place to go for people who want to look at this from the point of view of the original teachings of the Buddha. So we have also an 8-page brochure that we're translating into other languages. We leave these at Buddhist centers. Right now, we're producing one in the native language of Sri Lanka, which is called Sinhala, so that people can read our materials in their own language. Now, I want to also mention we have a major project that we just launched in Sri Lanka. I was there. I've been to Asia the last 4 years to different countries, but Sri Lanka we chose as the first country to actively engage in an ongoing and huge commitment. And what we're doing in Sri Lanka is we started off, I should say, with the second annual Asian Buddhist Animal Rights Conference. First one was in Seoul, South Korea, 16, and the one just this October was in Colombo, the capital of Sri Lanka. So we had 600 people, standing room only, in an auditorium in downtown Colombo. And we had some of the top dignitaries in the country at this conference. The Speaker of the Parliament, who's probably the second most powerful person in the country, gave a very inspiring speech on why we shouldn't be eating animals from his heart, and also offered to help us in any way he can. So what we're going to do, part of our project is going to be, we're going to ask the Parliament, the governing body of the country. So this would be like asking the U.S. Congress to have a meatless day. They may choose Monday. They could choose any day of the week they want. And the speaker will help us with this. We want to get this. So that'll be a symbol for the country. But what we're trying to do is to move the Buddhists in the country of Sri Lanka to a vegetarian at least, and hopefully to a vegan or plant-based diet. There are 15 million Buddhists in Sri Lanka out of a population of 21 million. So we have a lot of work to do, but the potential is amazing. So with that conference, we had also most of the top monks in the country. It's a country where the people really not only respect, but listen to what the monastic community says. It's a very devoutly Buddhist country. So this is what we're doing. We're working with the power structure in that country to try to encourage dramatic change in diet. Of course, we also talked to them about global warming. Sri Lanka is a small island off the southeast coast of India. And when global warming gets to a certain point, we're probably not far from that. What will be the countries that are hit the hardest? Well, the island nations will be hit the hardest. Countries like Sri Lanka and Taiwan and Singapore. So this message rings loud and clear in Sri Lanka. So what we do, we've hired two people, one a director, Keshini Bandaranika, and she's an attorney there. She's directing our project. She's a longtime animal activist. And then a young monk by the name of Bhante, which is a kind of a nice but familiar way to refer to a monk or nun. Bhante Mahanama is his name. And he is very skilled and experienced in running large social media campaigns. He's run, for example, the campaigns, 3 successful campaigns for members of the Parliament of Sri Lanka, where he got over 1 million likes for his candidate. So this is what we're doing. We're investing money in social media, high quality video production. We're going to put it on YouTube. And Bhante Mahanama is already at work. Our goal in the first year is to have 1 million likes. Second, the other part of our campaign is there are opportunities in that country for public speaking, to go into schools, the Buddhist schools, Sunday schools, and colleges and universities. Sometimes we can get 1,000 people in the room at one time. And we're going to send our people, our army, if you will, or our team of people into these schools with some films sometimes to share. Sometimes we'll have a nutritionist there. Sometimes we'll have a doctor there. Sometimes we'll have a cook or chef there to talk about what you can make when you stop eating animal flesh. You know, most of us know the answer to that. It's not so easy for someone that's been eating animal flesh for their entire lives. We're going to have Buddhist monks and nuns. Hopefully we'll have some of the top political leaders in the country. And one by one, we're going to have audiences with 500 here, 1,000 here, 1,000 there at the same time, this Facebook campaign to change the hearts and minds of the Sri Lankans. Next stop will be another Asian country. I'm pretty sure I know where we're going. I'm not going to release that yet. It's a country with over 60 million Buddhists, 60 million Buddhists. So those are some of the things that we're doing at DVA, or Dharma Voices for Animals. And I just wanted to mention, if you're interested in this and you want to become a member, it's actually quite simple. You just go to become a member. No, it's join DVA. Sorry, join DVA. It's just a top tab on our website, and you become a member. You get our e-newsletter, comes out to keep you abreast of what we're doing, and you'll be eligible for, at no cost, plant-based mentoring by our team of mentorers, nutritionists, physician, etc. So that's one thing you can do. Of course, you can donate money. We're always looking to fund our projects, and you can do that on our website. So with that, I want to turn my attention to the other half of the program. You can see this really does fit together quite nicely. It was the practice of meditation that led me to Buddhism and the Dharma. It was both the practice of meditation and Buddhism and my animal activism that led me to co-founding with Kim and Patty and David, Dharma Voices for Animals. So we're going to take questions at the end. So if you have questions about DVA, if you could, please hold those questions. And then we have 10 or 15 minutes at the end to talk about it. Okay, so now I'm going to transition into mindfulness and meditation. So if I was in a room with a bunch of people, and I'm actually going to I have 2 meditation groups that have been going on for 8 years and 9 years here in San Diego, and we meet in 2 hours. And what I would do is I would ask, so I'm going to ask you this, it's more of a rhetorical question, so you can answer this to yourself. And then you could share that with me and with Lisa at the end. The first question is, think about this, if you will. What is mindfulness? When you hear the word mindfulness, what do you think of? What is it? 50 years ago, if you asked that question in the U.S., nobody would know what you're talking about. But now, culture, pop culture, Buddhism and other spiritual paths coming to the West, a lot of people know what mindfulness is. So this is the centerpiece of the practice of Buddhism that I do. What's mindfulness? The definition I like is, it is knowing what your experience is in the present moment. Knowing what your experience is in the present moment. So, for example, I'm speaking now, and I am aware, or I know that I'm speaking. Now, sometimes you can be talking and thinking about other things, right? Like what you're going to say next. I mean, it's happened to me a million times. So I'm not really in the present moment. I'm not really aware in a particular moment that I'm speaking. I'm kind of like on automatic pilot. I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. I'm thinking about what the other person said. Instead, there's another possibility, and that is when speaking, to know we're speaking. When listening, to know we're listening. So you can practice mindfulness right now, wherever you're sitting or standing or lying down, reclining, just to be mindful of the body. What does the body feel like? Just feel the body. I'm sitting in a chair myself. If you're sitting in a chair, just feel the body in a sitting posture. It's one of the first basic instructions that the Buddha gave. Just it's universal. The Buddha didn't own mindfulness, but he was an amazing being that was able to describe and teach what this practice is all about. When standing up, know you're standing up. When sitting down, know you're sitting down. Feel the body. That's what mindfulness is. When feeling sad, know you're feeling sad. When feeling happy, know you're feeling happy. So this takes a lot of practice, right? I mean, we don't grow up with the teaching of mindfulness. If you lived in Asia, you'd be hearing this all the time. But in the U.S., we really, or in other Western countries, we really, I don't know where people on the call, I assume most are from the West, probably not so many from Asia, but this is new. We have to recondition our mind to pay attention to what we're doing. So a reminder is just pay attention. Be in the present moment. So this is what mindfulness is. Okay, so now what's meditation? You could answer this to yourself. What is meditation? So the way I describe meditation is it's mindfulness with the eyes closed. So you get in a position, and I'm going to instruct. Why don't we start on this now? I think this is probably a good way to do it. So the first method of meditation that's usually taught is sitting meditation. One could do walking meditation, standing meditation, reclining meditation, or sitting meditation. So here's the first part of sitting meditation instruction. So find a comfortable position. So you can be sitting on a chair, as I am. You can be sitting on a cushion. You can be sitting on a bench or in another position. So I'm sitting in a chair, and the starting point is to sit up straight. So not rigid, like shoulders up and neck back like that, but relaxed, but not slouching to the right or to the left or backwards or forwards. You want to sit straight, but not rigid. And the back should be straight. Now, for some people, this is not possible. It's chronic pain or illness or something. So you just find a position that's most comfortable for you. If you cannot sit straight, then sit in a way that's most comfortable. But if you can sit straight, make sure the spine is straight, not rigid, but straight, that the neck is up like this. It's not like this or down into the shoulders. It's in this position, if you can see me. Yeah. So I'm sitting straight. The eyes are looking straight ahead. What you do with your hands, you can either put your hands, like left hand below the right hand, cup it and then put it in your lap, or you can switch that, right hand below the left hand, put it in your lap. You can put your palms on thighs, or you can move your hands the other way and put the back of your hands on thighs, or you can fold your hands. So why don't you try that? You know, if you've meditated before, this will come as second nature, but it's always good to go back to the basics. So, you know, if you're playing the piano or the saxophone or a runner, I used to be a runner, distance runner, you want to make sure that you're doing the fundamentals correctly. So this is important. Even if you meditate for a while, this is like a way to kick the tires. So sit up straight, but not rigid. Hands in the lap or on the thighs, or folded if you prefer that. And then gently close your eyes. So you're not like close. I don't know if you can see this. There's not a frown on the face, like holding the eyes real tight. It's much more relaxed, gently closing the eyelids. But if the eyes were open, you'd be looking straight ahead. Now, if you are accustomed to meditating with the eyes open, that's okay. But it's really important to not look around. If you like, a lot of the Zen practitioners will sit facing the wall and keep their eyes open. So that's okay. There's not a lot of distraction. The Tibetans will sit eyes open but looking down. So the way that I've learned, the practice that I do called Theravadan Buddhism, there's Theravadan Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism. Theravada Buddhism comes from Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Myanmar, formerly called Burma. And Cambodia also. Those are the main countries. Mahayana, everywhere else, China, Korea, Japan, Vietnam, Tibet, etc. So let's start the meditation. Back straight, not rigid, head up, eyes closed. First, feel the body. Just feel your body in a sitting posture. You might feel the weight of the body on the chair or on the cushion. You might feel your feet on the floor. If you're sitting cross-legged, you might just feel the legs on the floor or on a mat. So first instruction is feel the body. Very simple. Just feel the body. And next, we can open to sound. We can practice mindfulness of hearing. So this is also a very simple instruction. Notice hearing. So it can be the sound of my voice. There's nothing you have to do, just pay attention. So you can hear the sound of my voice. You might be getting louder. You might be getting softer. Notice the sound of my voice. Other sounds in the room where you are, if you're outside, other sounds. So what we're trying to do is to pay attention to hearing in a relaxed but alert way. So we want to be relaxed, but still at the same time paying attention. So that's alertness. So it's a balance between alertness and relaxation. It's the middle way. So just take a moment. I won't say anything. to try to be mindful of hearing. Hearing is automatic. Hearing happens by itself. It doesn't require us to do anything. All we need to do as a meditator is to pay attention. Now we're going to practice mindfulness of breathing, just paying attention to the breath. So this is a basic instruction, pretty much in any meditation system. So I'm going to invite everyone to notice your breath. Can you notice your breath? What does the breath feel like? So rather than trying to breathe the body doesn't need us to try to breathe in and out. The body breathes itself. Just like hearing, breathing doesn't require us to do anything. Just take a moment to notice your breath. Where do you notice your breath? Is it in the chest area, stomach area, nose, or somewhere in between? And I want to give you one more instruction on breathing, and that is to notice your in-breath and notice the out-breath. So wherever it's easiest to notice the breath, notice it. Notice the in-breath and the out-breath. Now, maybe some of you have noticed, it does happen all the time, that we get lost in thought. So here I've been instructing that we be mindful of hearing, being mindful of the rest of the body, being mindful of breathing. But it's not so easy. It's very simple, but it's not so easy. So this is a question to all of you. Did you notice that you were thinking? Did you notice that you were lost in thought? Was there a time that you didn't even remember in the last 5 or 10 minutes that you were meditating? Were you planning what you're going to do after this is over? Were you remembering what you did earlier today or at some point in time before today? Were you judging your performance, your meditation, thinking, I'm good at this, I'm terrible at this. This guy knows what he's talking about. He has no idea what he's talking about. It's called judging. So the mind does this, even when we don't want it to do. The thinking happens by itself, even when we don't want to think. So all we can do when we're lost in thought, when we don't even know we've been thinking, all we can do is wait for the moment when we are aware or mindful that we've been lost in thought. So are you with me? Meditating, in-breath, out-breath. I wonder when this can be over. I hope I have enough time to drive to wherever it is I'm going. You know, I don't know if this meditation works. This is where the mind goes. It thinks, even though we are not asking it to think, because we've been practicing thinking, mindless thinking, for most of our lives. So we can't do anything. But then while we're thinking, while we're lost in thought, but then there's a magical moment, a moment when the mindfulness comes back and we realize we've been lost in thought. Where was the mindfulness? This is a great mystery. But when the mindfulness returns and we remember we've been lost in thought, that is a magical moment. And in the next moment, we can come back intentionally to the breath, or to mindfulness of hearing, or to mindfulness of the body. We have a moment of intention, and then the mind may wander again. So now we've introduced mindfulness of thinking. Sometimes it's possible to be mindful that we're thinking while we're thinking. Most of the time, we're lost in thought, and there's no mindfulness until the magical moment when the mindfulness returns and we realize we've been lost in thought. That's a moment of mindfulness. And then the instruction is, when the mindfulness comes back and we realize we've been lost in thought, take the next moment to come back to the breath, if you're practicing mindfulness of the breath, or come back to hearing, if we're practicing mindfulness of hearing. So this is a simple instruction, not easy, right? If you're doing this for the first time, you're going to find out a lot about what the mind does. The mind is deeply conditioned. We live in a really complex and noisy and busy society. All this stuff going on. It is not easy to train the mind to be in the present moment. So why do we want to do this? Let me step back for a moment and share with you why I believe mindfulness and meditation is so important for animal activists. Why is it so important? So I am both a meditator, I'm a teacher. I've been teaching, I'm a lay teacher, obviously I'm not a monk. I'm a lay teacher of mindfulness, of Buddhist meditation. And I'm also an animal advocate. So those of us who are, and you don't have to have any special title or anything, if you care about animals and you're willing to do something, maybe in your own diet, to protect animals and to be sure that they're not harmed by your actions, and maybe you talk to friends about it, or maybe you're with an organization, and maybe this is something that you are, maybe animal activism is a huge part of your life, as it is for many people on the call. So we know about all the stress out there, how difficult it is, how frustrating it is, how much anger we feel because 70 billion land animals are slaughtered every year around the world. Maybe 1 trillion animals total, if you count the animals living in water, in seas, and in lakes. So how frustrating is this? Why are people doing this? We can get really angry. We can be filled with rage. We can experience self-righteousness and judgment. So those emotions are going to come up. But what do we do with them? We just get more angry, more outrageous, more self-righteous. When we get to a certain place, we're not helping animals at all. We're just suffering more and more, and we're spreading our suffering to others. So there is another way, and that's the practice I'm teaching here of mindfulness and mindful meditation. There is a way to come in harmony with our experiences. It's not that we're going to change our lives and the world so that all we experience are pleasant experiences. We're going to get lots of pleasant, lots of unpleasant, and lots of neutral experiences that are not pleasant and they're not unpleasant. So what we do with these experiences will determine whether we're happy or not, whether we have contentment or not. So the practice of mindfulness is a practice of coming into harmony with our present experiences. This leads to more peacefulness, more intimacy in our lives, and more of a sense of belonging, of being worthwhile, of being a part of this amazing universe. And it doesn't take anything away from our activism. We're actually much more effective activists when we're not expressing rage. Because, how many people are we going to convince to change their diet if we're going to just take a look at diet where most animal suffering is manifested? I mean, who are we going to change if we're yelling and screaming at people? So we're not happy. People we're talking to aren't happy, and the animals aren't having the advantage of an effective advocate. So this is really the ideal practice for animal advocates. So recently, Lisa was on this conference. We both went to we met out there to the animal rights conference, which was put on, sponsored by Farm. And I think there was maybe 1,500 people there or so. So myself and a friend of mine, Ari Nessel, we taught meditation for an entire day right at the beginning of the conference. And then we taught meditation and mindfulness each morning before the program started, before breakfast. And then recently I taught meditation at Mercy for Animals at their main offices in Los Angeles. I've also taught ACLU staff here in San Diego. It's one of the best affiliates in the whole country. So ACLU is the American Civil Liberties Union, and I teach meditation there. So I mean, it's a wonderful refuge. It's a wonderful support for all activists, those trying to advocate for social change. And in my experience, it's especially helpful and important for animal advocates. So I wanted to share that with you. So I think, Lisa, maybe it's a good time to have some questions, either about Dharma Voices for Animals, mindfulness, and meditation, or both.
Great. Thank you so much. This is really important and effective. I appreciate your presentation. I actually felt I was able to get into a deep meditation, even though I'm trying to moderate this webinar as well. So these tools are really effective in reducing stress, and I'm so grateful to you for sharing them with our community. Yeah. So if anyone...
Well, thank you for kind words. Thank you.
If anyone out there, whether you're on our Facebook Live, on the IDA page, or any other page that you're watching this from, you're welcome to ask a question in the comments, or you can also, if you're on the webinar itself, you can type a question into the chat box. If you're on the phone with us, you can press *4, and you'll be able to ask Bob a question directly. And the other way is, if you're on the computer, you can turn on your audio, and you also can turn your video on, and we can see you if you'd like to ask a question so Bob can see who you are. I just wanted to offer that for anyone. If you have any questions at all, you can put them into the chat box, and I'll also check our Facebook Live to see if anyone has a question there. I know that some people who were tuning in, they were saying that they were having some trouble focusing. And if you have any tips or tools, like when your mind does become busy and does float away, any tips there for people? Some people also were mentioning that it's hard for them to meditate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's an excellent question, which comes up all the time, because people have these issues in their life. It's hard to be in the present moment. So what I didn't have time to say, which I can say now in response to the question, is that the reason to meditate is not so much to become an accomplished or skilled meditator, whatever that is. The reason to meditate is so that when we're not meditating, we're connected, we're mindful, our mind is not reactive, that we can live with compassion for ourselves and for others. So this is an amazing opportunity. So this takes a lot of practice. My recommendation is that we pick one activity that we do, one daily activity that we do every day. So it might be brushing our teeth, it might be taking a shower, it might be eating breakfast, it might be walking upstairs, it might be opening the door of our car, going up the stairs, I already said the stairs, going down the stairs. Pick one activity. Don't try to be mindful all day long. You'll just get frustrated. Because if you're like most of us in the West, we weren't taught mindfulness. So it takes a long time. You can't pick up a musical instrument. You can't become a good basketball player by going out on a basketball court once or twice. You wouldn't even be able to make a basket. You have to continue to practice. The same with the saxophone or the piano. You have to practice. To learn a language, another language, come on, you can't just like start talking it. You have to practice it. So what I did, I started brushing teeth, shampooing hair. So take one activity a week and just try to be mindful when you're doing that activity. So it doesn't have to be anything. You don't, I have to be mindful. That's too intense. Just pay attention. Have the intention to pay attention. And when there isn't mindfulness, let's say while brushing the teeth, to not judge yourself. This is what happens because our minds are not used to being mindful. So pick one activity, try to do it mindfully, and then the next week, if you're finding that there's more mindfulness with this activity, then do another activity. It might be something like being mindful when you talk to somebody. It might be a family member. It might be a friend. It might be a coworker, a boss, or someone that reports to you. So you might be talking with them every day or most every day. So when you talk to them the next time, if this is the activity you pick, try to be mindful. Listen to what is said. Stay with your body. Notice the body in a sitting posture or standing posture, and just take one activity. And then you can build on that. You can make it 2 activities or 3 activities. If you're supporting this with meditation, then the mindfulness becomes easier. So this is my advice.
Thank you so much, Bob, because I know that it's tricky for people if they're not used to this, and you provided some excellent steps and things that we can really try with our daily lives, which is great. I appreciate that. Another person is sharing that any tips, or how does meditation help us with that feeling of hopelessness due to the obliteration of environmental protection regulations in politics and other things going on right now? How do we combat the feeling of hopelessness through mindfulness and meditation?
Yeah. So it is often said in meditation circles that we experience 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows in life. And probably more accurate to say 10 million or 10 billion. And hopelessness or despair is one of them. You know, and if we're not aware or mindful that we're experiencing this during our lives at any point in our lives, we're not paying attention. So for activists, especially animal activists or environmental activists, this is really common, maybe more common than for others. So when this comes up, the practice is really twofold: to be mindful. So when you're feeling hopeless, to know you're feeling hopeless. So what's the usual reaction when there's a really difficult, a real challenging emotion that comes up, like hopelessness? Well, there's basically two ways that we learn to react or to be with that. One is avoidance, right? We just don't know we're feeling hopeless. Or if someone asks us, we deny it. No, I'm not feeling hopeless. I'm actually doing okay. But this is really about being truthful with ourselves. When we're feeling hopeless, to know we're feeling hopeless. That's one part of it. The other part is compassion and self-compassion. So if a good friend of yours came to you and said, I've really been feeling hopeless, just without hope, despair. It's terrible. So what would you say? Just, no, go ahead, just live your life, you'll be okay. No, you probably say, I'm really sorry that you're feeling that, or you might feel that yourself. You might feel sorry. You might feel, we can call it compassion, to feel another person or our own suffering. That's compassion. To be present with our own suffering or the suffering of others is compassion. So to remember this, to remember compassion. So compassion is very simply holding or being mindful of hopelessness, not in I'm feeling hopeless, our teeth gritting our teeth and and a reaction to it. It's instead opening to the hopelessness. I feel hopeless. This is really painful. The hopelessness will pass. It'll get stronger, or it'll get weaker, or it'll stay the same, but it will pass. So if we can both be mindful and combine that mindfulness with self-compassion, is a whole huge practice of compassion, which comes directly from the Buddha, which I teach. It's the other half of mindfulness. One wing of the bird is mindfulness, and the other wing is compassion. So it's really important. Now, that's all. We don't have time really to get into more about compassion. There's some wonderful books written about it also, but to start exploring what's self-compassion. The Buddha said, one of my favorite expressions or teachings that he gave was that we could search the entire universe and find no one that's more deserving of our own love and compassion than ourselves. And he's talking about everybody on the call and everyone else. So this is huge, and I wish I could say more about it, but we don't have time to do it. But to practice self-compassion. And if there may be a Buddhist or Dharma center in your area, there's actually online stuff, but you really have to kind of be in the same room, I think. If you can't get out or you live too far away, if you can actually go to a meditation, I think some of these questions, you start seeing possibilities for some of these questions. Self-compassion on the one hand, mindfulness on the other. They really go together. They support each other.
Thank you so much, Bob, for explaining this in such a clear way. I now have this beautiful image of a bird with the two wings, and that will help me also to have a deeper understanding of meditation and mindfulness and how they come together to help activists. I'm very grateful to you for sharing this with us this evening and for introducing people a little bit to Dharma Voices for Animals. I must say that I'm so admirous of your work in the world and making a huge difference for the animals, being able to speak to Buddhists and in the vast numbers of them about compassion and how key that is to the original precepts. So this is your wonderful work in the world. It's a true legacy. And I also want to say that in Defense of Animals, we created an interfaith vegan coalition that is based on the work of Dharma Voices for Animals, so that we can try to approach all other faiths with a similar message of compassion for animals. So thank you for being our inspiration.
You're welcome. Thank you for your kind words, Lisa, and for inviting me. I really, really appreciate that.
Well, we want to make sure you get to your Sangha. And I'll say on behalf of everyone listening around the world, on Facebook, in our own webinar, I will say thank you so very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. And thank you all for listening and participating with your questions, and good luck to you in your work and also in your meditation practice and mindfulness practice.
Excellent. And stay tuned. IDA will be hosting in-person mindfulness and meditation practices for animal activists sometime. So hope you can join us for our Sustainable Activism webinars. We have them every month, and next week we have a vegan spirituality gathering online. Same time, but it's 1 week away. So hopefully you can tune in. Thanks to everyone for joining us, and thank you, Bob. Have a wonderful evening. Good night, everyone.
Night.
Good night.
Thank you.
You're welcome.